On the 4th of June 1898, the Spray cleared from the United States Consulate, and her licence to sail single-handed, even round the world, was returned to her for the last time. The United States Consul, Mr. Hunt, before handing the paper to me, wrote on it, as General Roberts had done at Cape Town, a short commentary on the voyage. The document, by regular course, is now lodged in the Treasury Department at Washington, D.C. On June 5, 1898, the Spray sailed for a home port, heading first direct for Cape Hatteras. On the 8th of June, she passed under the sun from south to north. The sun's declination on that day was 22 degrees 54 minutes, and the latitude of the Spray was the same just before noon. Many think it excessively hot right under the sun. It is not necessarily so. As a matter of fact, the thermometer stands at a bearable point whenever there is a breeze and a ripple on the sea, even exactly under the sun. It is often hotter in cities and on sandy shores in higher latitudes. The Spray was booming joyously along for home now, making her usual good time, when of a sudden she struck the horse latitudes, and her sail flapped limp in a calm. I had almost forgotten this calm belt, or had come to regard it as a myth. I now found it real, however, and difficult to cross. This was as it should have been, for after all of the dangers of the sea, the dust storm on the coast of Africa, the rain of blood in Australia, and the war risk when nearing home, a natural experience would have been missing, had the calm of the horse latitudes been left out. Anyhow, a philosophical turn of thought now was not amiss, else one's patience would have given out almost at the harbour entrance. The term of her probation was 8 days. Evening after evening during this time, I read by the light of a candle on deck. There was no wind at all, and the sea became smooth and monotonous. For 3 days I saw a full-rigged ship on the horizon, also becalmed. Sargasso, scattered over the sea in bunches, or trailed curiously along down the wind in narrow lanes, now gathered together in great fields. Strange sea animals, little and big, swimming in and out, the most curious among them being a tiny seahorse, which I captured and brought home preserved in a bottle. But on the 18th of June, a gale began to blow from the southwest, and the Sargasso was dispersed again in windrows and lanes. On this day there was soon wind enough and to spare. The same might have been said of the sea. The Spray was in the midst of the turbulent Gulf Stream itself. She was jumping like a porpoise over the uneasy waves. As if to make up for lost time, she seemed to touch only the high places. Under a sudden shock and strain, her rigging began to give out. First the main sheet strap was carried away, and then the peak halyard block broke from the gaff. It was time to reef and refit, and so when all hands came on deck, I went about doing that. The 19th of June was fine, but on the morning of the 20th, another gale was blowing, accompanied by cross seas that tumbled about and shook things up with great confusion. Just as I was thinking about taking in sail, the jibstay broke at the masthead and fell jib and all into the sea. It gave me the strangest sensation to see the bellying sail fall, and where it had been, suddenly to see only space. However, I was at the bows, with presence of mind to gather it in on the first wave that rolled up, before it was torn or trailed under the sloop's bottom. I found by the amount of work done in 3 minutes or less time that I had by no means grown stiff-jointed on the voyage. Anyhow, scurvy had not set in, and being now within a few degrees of home, I might complete the voyage, I thought, without the aid of a doctor. Yes, my health was still good, and I could skip about the decks in a lively manner, but could I climb? The great King Neptune tested me severely at this time, for the stay being gone, the mast itself switched about like a reed, and was not easy to climb. But a gun tackle purchase was got up, and the stay set taut from the masthead, for I had spare blocks and rope on board with which to rig it, and the jib with a reef in it was soon pulling again like a sodger for home. Had the Spray's mast not been well stepped, however, it would have been John Walker when the stay broke. Good work in the building of my vessel stood me always in good stead. On the 23rd of June, I was at last tired of baffling squalls and fretful cobble seas. I had not seen a vessel for days and days, where I had expected the company of at least a schooner now and then. As to the whistling of the wind through the rigging, and the slopping of the seas against the sloop's sides, that was well enough in its way, and we could not have got on without it, the Spray and I. But there was so much of it now, and it lasted so long. At noon of that day, a winterish storm was upon us from the northwest. In the Gulf Stream, thus late in June, the hailstones were pelting the Spray, and lightning was pouring down from the clouds, not in flashes alone, but in almost continuous streams. By slants, however, day and night, I worked the sloop in toward the coast, where on the 25th of June, off Fire Island, she fell into the tornado which an hour earlier had swept over New York City, with lightning that wrecked buildings and sent trees flying about in splinters. Even ships at docks had parted their moorings and smashed into other ships, doing great damage. It was the climax storm of the voyage, but I saw the unmistakable character of it in time to have all snug aboard and receive it under bare poles. Even so, the sloop shivered when it struck her, and she heeled over unwittingly on her beam ends. But rounding to, with a sea anchor ahead, she righted and faced out the storm. In the midst of the gale, I could do no more than look on, for what is a man in a storm like this? I had seen one electric storm on the voyage, off the coast of Madagascar, but it was unlike this one. Here the lightning kept on longer, and thunderbolts fell in the sea all about. Up to this time, I was bound for New York, but when all was over, I rose, made sail, and hove the sloop round from starboard to port tack, to make for a quiet harbour to think the matter over. And so, under short sail, she reached in for the coast of Long Island, while I sat thinking, and watching the lights of coasting vessels which now began to appear in sight. reflections of the voyage, so nearly finished, stole in upon me now. Many tunes I had hummed again and again came back once more. I found myself repeating fragments of a hymn often sung by a dear Christian woman of Fairhaven when I was rebuilding the Spray. I was to hear once more, and only once, in profound solemnity, the metaphorical hymn, "By waves and wind I'm tossed and driven." And again, "But still my little ship outbraves the blustering winds and stormy waves." After this storm, I saw the pilot of the Pinta no more. The experiences of the voyage of the Spray, reaching over 3 years, had been to me like reading a book, and one that was more and more interesting as I turned the pages, till I had come now to the last page of all, and the one more interesting than any of the rest. When daylight came, I saw that the sea had changed colour from dark green to light. I threw the lead and got soundings in 13 fathoms. I made the land soon after, some miles east of Fire Island, and sailing thence before a pleasant breeze along the coast, made for Newport. The weather after the furious gale was remarkably fine. The Spray rounded Montauk Point early in the afternoon. Point Judith was abeam at dark. She fetched in at Beavertail next. Sailing on, she had one more danger to pass. Newport harbour was mined. The Spray hugged the rocks, along where neither friend nor foe could come if drawing much water, and where she would not disturb the guardship in the channel. It was close work, but it was safe enough so long as she hugged the rocks close and not the mines. Flitting by a low point abreast of the guardship, the dear old Dexter, which I knew well, someone on board of her sang out, "There goes a craft." I threw up a light at once and heard the hail, "Spray ahoy!" It was the voice of a friend, and I knew that a friend would not fire on the Spray. I eased off the main sheet now, and the Spray swung off for the beacon lights of the inner harbour. At last she reached port in safety, and there at 1 a.m. on June 27, 1898, cast anchor, after the cruise of more than 46,000 miles round the world, during an absence of 3 years and 2 months, with 2 days over for coming up.